Welcome to the Home Service Contractor Blueprint by A2O Digital. Every episode will cover topics that impact all home service companies like marketing, sales tactics, operations, and more. Now, on to today's episode.
Super excited to be sitting here today. Justin, again, we're going to be talking about really focusing on customer service. You and I have been talking a lot about this, just to kind of refresh. I run a service company that's going to do close, around $35 million in service in revenue this year. Justin,
I work for a marketing agency, and we have over 100 customers, all in the home service industry. This is something that comes up for us a lot because, right, we do the marketing, we're getting you the leads. Ultimately, what an owner ends up looking at is, are my techs out there, and are they busy, right? So when they aren't, they end up coming to us, and there's multiple things that obviously affect your techs being on the road and getting jobs. Obviously the marketing, but then there's this whole component of customer service and answering the phones. If you can't do that, you can do all the marketing in the world, you're never going to realize any of that because you're not doing a good job answering the phones and booking them into a job that gets on the schedule. So this is something that we look at all the time, and I think it's something that people often as an owner forget about, right? And maybe sometimes it's kind of like it's happening and you don't think about that as much. You're thinking about the marketing and the leads, and like it's just as important to book those leads and do a good job of getting them on the schedule. So
yeah, customer service is funny. You take it for granted, but then also you put this unfair pressure on the team at times.
It is hard too, right? It is not an easy thing to be able to train a team to be able to answer a phone, answer objections that a customer have. Like, this is not an easy thing to do. It's not like just hire any person on the street, throw them in there, and they're going to be able to do this. There's a lot of nuance, and I think training involved to make them effective in a lot of aspects to this. So this is not like an easy thing to accomplish.
And what I'll say about that is, for this position, it doesn't, in our industry, everything is revenue, right? Revenue and call volume determines so much, right? We agree on that in our industry. So when things are really good, revenue's up, we're volume's up with calls, everything is good. You can kind of measure everything by that. Customer service is kind of in this just island by itself. And the one thing I'll say to you is, it's an industry. It's a part of our company that has high turnover, and it's one of those things where training is really tough because with that high turnover, you start investing money into it. But when things are really good, you take it for granted. Customers need help, you book them. You're you put them on the schedule. So the big time when this kind of becomes apparent to you when customer service is an issue is when people are slow, right? In our industry, in the garage door space, when we get slow, we call our marketing agency up and we first want to point a finger at somebody, and usually we point the finger at you, right? That's typically what happens.
It depends. Obviously, it depends on the person. Usually they're reaching out saying, hey, we're slow. Is there anything we can do? And we obviously, if they're slow, we would go in and look, and the account managers kind of already have a pulse on this, and we would go in and look. And sometimes it is, right? The marketing, there are ebbs and flows, and there could be times that are slow. There may be opportunities that are there that we can take advantage of to get more leads. But there's also times where that call happens, and we go in and we look at the lead volume and everything, and it's not down, right? Like, oh, this is actually kind of similar to what it's been when you've been saying you're busier. Sometimes you could even go in, it could be slightly up. And then that's where this other component of, the customer service comes into play, where, we're digging into that. We will we have full-time employees that are almost, not exclusively, but one of their main things is listening to phone calls, right? Because that's the way that we're able to understand what's happening from the customer service side. So that may happen, and you go and identify, hey, there's some opportunities in the customer service, and maybe that's what's happening. It could be a mixture of both, right? So, yeah, I forget what your original question was.
No, but so going back to that, when it's slow, people start to try and figure out like what's wrong. So from your point of view, when you look at customer service, you said you have 100 different clients that you deal with across the country. How many of them handle their customer service the same way out of those 100?
Well, a lot of our clients, use a specific call center, which does a really good job of answering phones. Now, there's things that you can do, and actually, we had an episode about this where we talked to the owner of that call center, Anthony Castiglione, and there's things within that call center, certain ammunition you can give them to allow them to be able to book calls at a better rate. And if you're interested in that, go listen to that episode. It's from maybe a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I don't know if we have like show notes in this. We can maybe like put a link to that, and you can go listen to that. So fortunately for a lot of our clients, they kind of have that built in, and you can kind of work with his team to, make sure you're getting the most out of that. And there are some that do it in-house and to varying degrees. This has been something for our clients that has definitely gotten better throughout the years. I remember back in the day, there were times where it was like, we had one situation where it was the owner's wife that was the one answering the phone calls, and she was, mean to customers. It was not a good situation. We're listening to these calls. We're like, they're never going to, realize the value of the marketing because this person's like, it's not a good situation with the customer service. And then you have to kind of have that conversation with the customer. And in this case, it was the customer's wife. So that was a little, tricky of a situation. But I would say less so now. Is that an issue? There's always like fine tuning, I think, and it can always, be better. But for a lot of our clients, they're in a better spot than they were. You talked about, high turnover in customer service. Talk about why is that? Why do you think there's so much high turnover? Is there anything that you're doing to try and prevent that? Like, let's I kind of want to dig into that a little bit because it's like an interesting, I think it's an interesting topic that, there's a lot that could be discussed.
Yeah, it's actually funny timing. I was sitting in on an interview for a customer service representative, and I did that purposely because I'm trying to understand it better. It's an entry-level position. The money is not typically there to be able to pay a high income to. So you have people who are coming in, maybe it's their first job, or it's their first office job, or maybe it's, they're re-entering their workforce, or, a lot of things, but they're not typically the most skilled candidates. Or sometimes you do get really skilled candidates, but they only wind up being with you for a short period of time because you either want to promote them within your company, or you want to move, or they wind up looking outside somewhere else.
Is there a certain like number that you're not willing to go over? Like, you pay hourly?
Hourly right now.
Is there a certain number, like I'm only going to, in the budget pay a certain amount and I can't afford to pay them anymore? Does that happen?
Yeah, it's funny because you get what you pay for. Not even you get what you pay for, but sometimes you advertise a position based on what the market is telling you to advertise it for. And you and I have talked about this, and that's why I said you kind of get what you pay for, because if you want somebody really skilled that's going to come in with a ton of experience, they're going to be asking for more. Now, there's certain areas of the business that I'm looking to save money on.
Yeah.
And this is one of those areas. If I'm able to hire somebody at market value, the market rate, I'm going to. And for this position, I find that. So, we spend time trying to train them. But I think the mistake that I've made in the past was when somebody comes in, I kept putting them into a job when a lot of these people are coming in and they're actually looking for a career. And the skill set that you're learning as a customer service rep actually translates into so many different areas. The one parallel that I've always found is sales. People who come into customer service, they usually don't want to be in sales. They tell me all the time, I don't want to be in sales, I don't want to be in sales. The funny part is their job is a sales job. There's just no money transaction. So
sometimes people, if they don't really know what sales is, too, have a negative connotation. Like, I'm trying to convince someone to do something that they don't like necessarily need or whatever. But that's not sales, right? You're trying to help the customer and solve their issue. And I don't know. I think some people, if they don't really know, they hear sales and it's like, oh, but
it's true. Well, I think it's being able to handle the pressure. It's a really high pressure job, customer service. For some reason, when people are under, well, not for some reason, but when people are have chaos in their life, something that's broken that normally is working perfectly fine, it's the end of the world. Mm-hmm. You know, their garage door, their pipe breaks, their toilet's clogged. Like, in reality, there are much bigger problems in life than those. But when they call, it's the end of the world. Or say they got work done and they call back, and the people that we're trying to train wind up getting abused by customers unfairly because they're not happy with whether something happened in their life or the way something turned out. And that also causes a ton of turnover because customer service reps are like, I'm getting paid $22 an hour to get screamed at, you know, and that's a tough, you know, thing to retain. So
what is there anything, so like, let's just say you're looking at, because I'm thinking about this, if like, okay, my high end, I'm paying $22 an hour and I'm competing with all their, you know, jobs that will pay kind of at that level. Are there things that you do to try and, like, the experience of the job, right? Money is one thing, but then, like, you know, are there things that you do to try and like make this a job that people like, to retain them, not just compete on money, right? Compete on making this a good workplace that they're going to enjoy. Is there anything, you know, what is there anything you do from that end?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So culture is the most important thing in the world to me. Community, culture. I will, at the end of my life, when I look back, I will always say that that's been the most important thing. Making a work environment that people want to be around at is so important. We're lacking that in society, so people want to be a part of it. The problem you have with customer service that we've run into is it's not a job that you can go stand by the water cooler for 15 minutes, an extra 5 minutes talking to your, co-team member, because the calls are constantly coming in. It's a speed game, right? Mm-hmm. We need to get the calls answered as fast as possible. If our queue's too high, we're going in there yelling at them. You know, we'll sometimes have an after-work happy hour in our back warehouse, and I was talking to our customer service reps about this. They've got to stay on the phones because we don't have solutions, right? And they kind of feel like they're drowning in a pool and people are having a party on the side of the pool. So it's a funny thing that I'm learning with customer service from, like, what else can I give them? And what I've started to realize recently is I want to help people open doors to the next step in their career. So really trying to work with the customer service reps of, hey, listen, excel at this job that you're in right now, but there is a career here for you at Precision. Mm-hmm. There's a career for you in the service industry. So that's what I'm really trying to do, and that's hard. And then kind of flipping it back onto you, you know, marketing agencies, people, they expect a certain level of competence, and we're dealing with constant fluctuations and change and human beings in these roles. And listen, that owner's wife that you were talking about, who knows what's going on, you know, the business. I don't know. I get it is so easy to say, well, why can't they just be nice? Well, why can't the customers just be nice? So it's a struggle that we definitely have, and it's a tough job. It's a really tough job in our business.
Is there a certain amount of time you talked about, like they can't sit by the water cooler? If I was sitting there and I had to answer phones for 8 hours of the day, the whole day, I would be mush by the end of the day. Like, Is there, like, do you give them breaks? Is there things that you do to try to, because that's a recipe, I feel like, for burnout really quickly. You go in, you're like sitting there on the phone, like you said, you're talking to maybe some customers. I'm sure there's some very nice customers. You're talking to some angry customers, and like, are there things you do there to try and avoid kind of the burnout? Because I could imagine that can be like, it's a stressful day, right? And you continue to do that if you're just on the phones 24/7 for, you know, your work day. Yeah. Is there anything that you've thought about with that, or no?
No, definitely. The issue the issue is, right, when you look at it, the business is running. Your car driving 100 miles an hour, and this is one of those things where the marketing company, our marketing agency that's handing us leads. This is so important to me. Running this business, handling leads properly is one of the most important things in the world, right? We both can argue. You tell me all the time how much money I waste in certain areas, and I'm just trying my best to handle these leads. So being human and having people say, hey, get off the phones, take a break until I have the extra people, it's hard to do. But we have been looking at that. We've been working with our call center, and they have the same issues, and giving people the breaks. I really think it's around, if I had to guess, talking to people, that 40 call range is that 40 call amount, right? Between 30 and 50 calls, but giving people breaks.
So that's per day. Per
day.
That's kind of a number that you shoot for. 30 to 40, ideally 40 calls per day is an amount where, you're getting value and they're not, sitting there at the end of the day like, oh my gosh, what happened? So I'm mush.
And I've been calling them sprints recently, so I try and get our customer service reps to go on sprints. They used to feel like they were coming in at a certain time, to call it 8 o'clock, and leaving at 4 o'clock or 4:30, and it was a marathon. They're on the phones all day. They get to go use the bathroom, get that drink of water when they're running the marathon. And I've tried to explain to them more recently that it's more of we need to have a bunch of sprints during the day. A bunch of points where you're running as fast as you can, you're answering all these calls, but after
get a chance to decompress for a little bit, and then okay, I'm ready to do it again.
And that brings me into the point that I want to ask you, because you've brought up, when it comes to marketing, like the ways marketing leads come in, they're not just coming in from phone calls, right? When you think of customer service, and we've always thought about customer service, we've thought about phone calls. It's the most important thing, right? And the call center, all of these ways, going back to the Yellow Pages, the only way people are finding you are phone calls, but that's changing quickly. I mean, you could talk about it. How many different places, what are some of the other places leads are coming in right now?
Yeah, so we built a tool that's an online scheduler where it connects directly to your CRM, and a customer can go and book the job themselves on the schedule, and it knows based on how you have your dispatch board set up, when availability is, where to place it, what technician to place it on, or if you use some type of open tech concept. But we built that out, and I think that's something that in the future here is going to be used more and more, especially for these younger generations. A lot of people don't want to call, right? And that's only going to, as this younger generation gets older and older, is people are going to want to move to that, right? Oh, I can go and just book, and someone's going to show up, and I don't have to talk to a single person.
Yeah.
So we've seen in many markets that have started to use that adaptation to that. Your New Jersey market, I think over 30% of the website leads come from that scheduler now. So that's a great thing, right? Like you're talking about your team, you're kind of moving some of that off of your team having to answer those calls, and that kind of just automatically goes on the schedule. So that's one thing we're seeing. The other thing that I see is, or I guess we see as an agency, not everybody, obviously, not all leads come in as a call. The calls are the easiest because you have that customer there, and you can, have that conversation and try and book them and get them on the schedule. But when it's a form, that's where we've seen things tend to go sideways as well. We have this thing called the online garage door showroom for our garage door clients, where someone can kind of go browse doors that are available and submit for a quote, right? So then from there, you would get that quote. That's what is your process to go then and book that. And ultimately, you would want to book that into a free estimate at the customer's home. What is your process for booking that at that point? We actually did a study with a lot of our customers on how they turn those leads, into jobs and then into revenue. And there's just wildly different results depending on the processes that you have. But there's a million places that come in as forms. Yelp. If you do anything with Angie's List, a lot of that comes in as a form, right? A lot of people on their websites, have a form. Like I just said, the online garage door showroom in your case. These are all places where the customer isn't necessarily calling, but you need to have a process to be able to turn that into a lead. And if you don't, you're not going to turn any of it. You need to be able to, follow up quickly, right? A lot of this is speed. If someone, has a broken garage door in your case, they're looking for someone to come now. If they, contacted, let's say you and someone else, the first person usually to get on the phone with them is going to be the one that wins that job. So the speed, there's a lot of things we looked at. How are you contacting them back? Are you trying to call once and then you're done? Are you, do you follow up a couple times? Sometimes people fill these things out and they're at work, right? And maybe they can't answer the phone, but if you text them, then they can answer and you're starting that conversation. So that's just another spot that we've seen where sometimes there can be, gaps there that you need to kind of think about. What's your process?
And that it's funny. Those are the two different types of customers. One customer who's calling saying, I'm ready to book, or they're going on your online scheduler, which honestly, your online scheduler has been a lifesaver because that's taken so much pressure off of our phones. People who it's got 100, like the customer enters the data, so the accuracy is better. There's so many things that the customer's doing that's making our lives better. And plus, we are getting unbelievable reviews from customers telling us how much they love that. So thank you again.
Street to Fleet, by the way, if anybody
Street to Fleet
wants to go look it up.
I will tell you, Street to Fleet has
streettofleet.com.
been awesome. I'm getting a tattoo soon. And
there you go.
Those, along with the calls where the customers want to just book, they're pretty straightforward. Where the customer says, I want to book, you help them through the process. The second part is those inquiries, right? And I look at inquiries as a funny thing because that is that big area. That's one of the main reasons why we're having this conversation, because so many people have these customers that are interested, but they're not 100% bought in yet, right? Mm-hmm. And you were just saying that, like, they're building a door on our online showroom. They're interested. They're not saying, I want to buy this door necessarily. They're saying, I'm interested in this door, right? If they called us up and said, hey, I'm ready to buy, it's not. They're interested. And you're right. And you've exposed so many areas where, and I'm appreciative of it, because when I come to you and say, hey, what the heck's going on? And you said, well, you got to point the figure at yourself first. And how we handle those inquiries has been a major topic of conversation recently. And thanks to you, you've initiated that, right? We're looking at the process of how we do it. And the problem I will say internally is, which I'm trying to coach our team, is when we have a problem, right? And our problem is we want to find the best way to handle Yelp leads. These inquiries, these leads, these messages. Our team will find the first solution to that problem rather than actively trying to find the optimal solution of the way to book that. And talk about the what you did. So we had an online showroom for doors where the customers would go and pick out doors that they liked, and then they'd send a form out. We thought, hey, we were doing pretty good on it. We've got $50,000 in revenue from this or whatever it was. Hey, things are good. We're happy, but necessarily our data wasn't perfect the way we tracked it. You guys went in to actually find accurate data. Just talk about that study you did for us. That was really interesting.
Yeah, so, we work with a lot of precision franchises, so we have many of them using this, and we wanted to go and look and see what did you guys actually get out of these leads? Was it turning into book jobs? Was it turning into revenue for you guys? Because this was kind of a tool that we built. We knew that people like to shop this way, where they wanted to kind of see what doors were available. So we did that, and it was a manual kind of study. We basically went in and pulled all the customers' names that submitted forms, and then went into your guys' CRMs and looked if they turned into a book job. Looked if, did you sell that job? Was it an estimate that you didn't sell? It kind of like followed it all the way through to the point of sale. And there was just dramatically different results. I think on the high end, some of the people that had better processes were turning 70% of those leads into in-home estimates. And then I forget what percentage that, in terms of selling them. But on the low end, people were turning only 15% of those leads into in-home estimates. So clearly there was, different processes and different things going on there that will affect ultimately how much revenue you end up making off of those leads.
Well, talk about the data points that and I have it actually.
So we looked at how many got onto your schedule as an in-home estimate.
Yeah.
We looked at how many ended up getting sold. what was the total sales number, what was the like average ticket. We looked at a bunch of stuff.
You looked at
those are the main things.
unsold estimates. How much
Yeah,
the
we
value?
looked at that as well. Unsold estimates, right? How many, if you did get in the home, how many did you end up selling? How many did you not sell? So it's just interesting. You know, when you get a big data set, you can see like, depending on how you handle those things, it was dramatic. There was one customer, I think, turned each lead that they got into an average of $2,000 in revenue. And there was another client where it was $100 in revenue per lead is what they ended up with. And this was over, you know, a 3-month period, a good sample size. Like, so that just shows you what you do in the middle. Like, you can get the lead. Unless you have those processes, it can be dramatically different on what that ends up, you know, resulting in terms of, you know, revenue for your business.
Yeah, my brain exploded when I saw this. You're right. It's because you built this part of our website, just like any lead. You know, you built a lead generation tool, whether it's a mailer, whether it's PPC. Your job is to drive customers to us, and then have us. That's your job, right? And then you're handing the baton off. And I think the struggle that I've noticed with marketing agencies is you can do an amazing job, but if the client is not booking those jobs and then converting those jobs, you're not going to look good because you're it's up to them. So when I start,
we will at this point, before we take anyone on, kind of qualify them. Like if we don't feel confident that they're going to be able to at least do a decent job on, you know, the booking and even like the sales end too, right? Like it's never going to work out. The equation won't work out if you can't kind of do those things somewhat competently.
That's really interesting.
And it's ultimately going to end up, you know,
so
all this work.
You'll turn away people, even though it's a big ticket, like a big client.
Yeah. If we're not into, you know, building a relationship for a few months and then, you know, it doesn't work. That's not good for us. That's not good for you. Yeah. Right. So like ultimately we got to be somewhat confident that you have your stuff together on the, you know, answering the phones and sales and all of that to realize value. Like it's got to be a win-win. And, you know, if you just don't have those processes, then it never can be.
And that's great. And when you built this part of the website where it was driving leads, it was a home run. I didn't know how good it was. I just thought, oh, this is a really nice part of our website. Looking at this data made me realize, oh my God, we have this is another broken part of our company that if you didn't run this report, it would have been really hard to see because sometimes the customer doesn't get booked correctly. Sometimes, who knows? And I know you guys are really working on integrating all leads into Service Titan, which I want to get to right after this because I think that's really going to help us. But so I looked at our team and I said, okay, this is a twofold problem. One, how are we handling the lead once it gets sent to us as an inquiry? And what our team was doing wrong was they were reaching out twice over the phone, and when the customer didn't answer, they just kind of let it go, right? Rather than sending out a text message, rather than sending out an email, reaching out to somebody some other unorthodox way, some other way or standard way that we could do that. Then once we got the lead, we were closing. We were doing an okay job from there. You know,
you were selling it okay.
Yeah,
once you got in the door,
above
then it was the normal sales
above our company average, which when we looked across the network, we were fine. The issue that we were having
was that initial getting it onto the schedule.
And it was because it was a broken process. What my team was doing was they were taking this inquiry, this lead, and they were calling twice, and then they were dropping.
Yeah. What if I'm at work in this meeting right now and you call me? I can't answer it. And
and then what happens? They don't call us back, or we play phone tag, and then that lead would get put into a completed box when it's not completed. It's an unbooked box, but the customer service reps, and I give them all the credit in the world because they're moving 1,000 miles an hour, and they are not necessarily looking at how to thrive. They are looking at how to survive. That is one thing that I've always learned is they actually zoom out at the end of the day. They just want to survive the day.
So in your case, like you're big enough, like you would get an ROI if you had someone just literally handle all of your forms and like non-phone call type leads, because like you said, it sounds like they're answering phone calls, they're doing all this stuff, and then these forms come in and there's whatever, you got to think about it that way too with customer service. I know, like, you think the numbers and how much I'm spending here, but to have the coverage of someone to like just handle that, or have an extra person to be able to answer the calls, like all of that ends up making a difference in the jobs you book, and probably is, worth over hiring, and making sure you have coverage. I don't know.
No, that's and having in customer service, it is I have a luxury, right? Once you get to a certain revenue spot, you can start changing things and having people in specialized roles, right? Somebody who's in just customer retention, somebody who's in just this. But the problem, and you see it, a lot of your clients are not above maybe $10 million, or some of them are, some of them aren't. So, and a lot of people who listen to this aren't. And they've got that same problem where they have all of these leads coming in, and it's just a really tough way to manage. So, and I know the one solution that you guys have had, because we're a client of ServiceTitan, big fan of theirs, you're trying to funnel all the leads into where?
Into ServiceTitan, yeah. So with these forms, right, like they don't make it necessarily into ServiceTitan unless you make a point to go do that and like connect the ServiceTitan.
You have to manually
push it in there. Yeah,
you have to.
I mean, I guess you could manually go and put every single lead, but if you're having trouble even following up, I don't know if you're going to be manually putting the leads in. So basically, what we've been looking at is all of the places, all of the forms that don't happen via phone call, we're connecting to ServiceTitan's API and pushing that in. So then at least you can see what's going on. So when we kind of pulled this data, we did it manually. We went and said, okay, you got 30 leads this month for the online showroom, and then we went into the CRM and said, okay, 10 of them made it into the CRM and you sold however many. We had to do that manually. But if we're now via their API going to push that into ServiceTitan, and we're almost done. I have to go check and see how close we are to doing this. So every lead would get in there. So at least now it's measured and you can see how you're doing, right? And then you'll be able to see the process you put in place. Does that improve? You got 30, leads next month, and before you were only booking 10 of them. You put in a new process and now it went up to 20. Great. We're headed in the right direction. So what can be measured can be managed. It's kind of like that situation, right? Like, let's get it in there so that you can measure it and then be able to understand how you're doing, versus kind of this abyss of messages that went out and I have no idea what happened with any of them, which is kind of how it was set up. Yeah,
and no, that honestly, right now they come in as emails. So we have a Trello board, which is a tool we've used, and that process obviously is not perfect, but having them in ServiceTitan, being able to text customers through ServiceTitan, email through ServiceTitan, do all of that. The goal is that we're not going to book at 100%. That's impossible. But to be able to improve on the process, the biggest problem, and I will say, is people have a process and they just set it and they forget it, and then they want to point fingers at why things aren't going well when you need to be looking at your processes constantly. And people don't want to do that. It's really, I found it hard. It's hard for me to get managers and people to do it because there's just so much going on. The service industry is one of these things where there's always a fire to put out.
Yeah.
And going upstream, we talk about this internally, is it becomes a downstream problem where at the bottom you find this problem and you're trying to fight this problem. Really, when you have to go to the beginning and find out where's the problem coming from upstream, and we need to figure that out. So when it comes to these leads, we're definitely seeing that. I think putting it in ServiceTitan is going to help. Honestly, driving a lot of people, I will tell you this, to Street to Fleet for us, our online booker will be huge. When they get to the end of a really, good, experience that they have on our website, you guys built a great website for us. Getting them to book right there and then, amazing, right? So, it's funny. It's funny. We even get leads from our comment section of TikTok or Facebook. It's wild, and handling these different ways. It's just things that you don't imagine. So it's a lot. And
yeah, there's a lot of places. You just mentioned that. There's like local service ads. You ask your customer service team, you're supposed to go in there and respond to leads in there. And there's a million places. So just like really dialing down those processes and making sure that, you got that as tight as possible is how you're going to be most successful. It's never perfect, but what I have a question for you. What are the main KPIs that you use to kind of measure the CSSs and how you guys are doing? Like, I would imagine booking rate is one thing, that you look at. Like, what are the main kind of KPIs that you use there?
Yeah, so booking rate is huge, right? We want to be able to know that we're booking people at a certain rate that we need to.
Is there a number you shoot for with that?
Yeah, so when it comes to, typically 85% is where we've gone. We've had people higher than that. It's a manipulatable number. It definitely is where people, we try to pay people on these KPIs, and they try to manipulate them. So
how do they manipulate them?
Well, if they say that a job is not an opportunity, like it's not a it's a customer that's not qualified to be a customer of ours.
So you get rid of, I think I know where you're going. You get rid of, for booking rate, it's only bookable calls. So if someone calls and says, hey, can I talk to Brandon? I need to talk to him about, I'm a vendor of his or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not a bookable call.
But so sometimes they'll get a customer that'll call in and it's like kind of on the borderline where they'll say, well, that shouldn't be counted towards our booking rate. A customer calls in with an inquiry. They don't think that it's necessarily a job that should count against their booking rate, and it should.
Do you put the onus on them to say this is a bookable call or not?
Yes, we do, but then we
do you audit it then?
We do. We spot check it. It's that's another person, right? Would you rather have somebody spot checking calls or following up on leads? So that booking rate is huge. Call time, average call time, right? If you have somebody booking at a high rate, but they're spending 7 minutes on a phone with somebody that's high, we usually have people around 3 minutes per phone call.
So there's a sweet spot, I'd imagine, in that if you're taking too long, right, that's less calls you can answer, but also you don't want them rushing the customer off the phone and saying, oh, what's your address? Okay, I gotta go, so that's, you said 3 minutes is that sweet spot that you've found? Spot.
But those are high level, surface level KPIs. The reality is when you start to dive deep into it, what are the hardest ones to book? And how do your customer service reps or team handle this? And it's the ones that are pricing concerns. Okay. When somebody has a pricing concern, we really coach our team. We don't give pricing over the phone. It's just not. It's sometimes it just doesn't end well because the customer is asking about something that they don't know, and they're gonna make a decision based on a price that's not 100%. So, like we will work with our team. So, getting better ways to report on those KPIs. And I know you and I were looking at some different tools to get better reporting. If I can get that information, customer, retention, right? Where a customer calls in to cancel and they save that customer. That doesn't necessarily show up as a KPI that you can easily retain, but that you can easily gather. But that is huge. The retention of a customer is enormous. So there's a lot of other KPIs.
The price shopping one's an interesting one. I feel like people can have different views on it. I feel like we could go into a whole episode of how do you handle price shoppers, right? Like I've heard some people say, listen, if they're a price shopper, they're not my customer. I don't care about it, Yeah. So like some people take that approach. Some people, you're spending the marketing dollars to bring them in. Why not get your tech in the garage and try and work through that? And I know we've talked about that a lot with your team, and I feel like that's a nuanced one. You said you don't like to answer the question. So when I ask, what do you do then? Hey, how much, in your case, does a spring cost? Like what does your customer service rep say that? You don't want to answer it, so what do you do? So
and that's a great question, right? You usually like to answer a question with another question because you're starting to qualify. And when the customers start to understand that this is not just a simple black and white answer, great, I'd love to help you with that. What type of spring system do you have in your house? And then we go down that list. And once the customer, then you start asking them other qualifying questions. Do you want high cycle? Do you want standard? What is you looking for? The goal of that call, and the goal of all of our calls, is just to get our people in front of the customer's face, our service technicians in front of the customer's face. People think sometimes that they need to answer all the customers' questions. No, we go to a lot of customers for free estimates, knowing I'd rather give them a chance in front of that customer. We actually had one the other day. Our customer service rep did a phenomenal job. The customer got upset because we would not give her the price. We were the only company that wouldn't give her the price. She was so mad. And we said, I'm sorry, but this is it. But we can send somebody out to your property. And she had all these demands. Great. We get our technician out to the property. He winds up going out there. He sells them the highest end motor that we have. And you would have thought by listening to this call, there's no way this customer is going to do business with us. But the problem goes back to originally what I had is we have some really talented, like that person who booked that call, she's going on to different places in her life. And I hope to God I can retain her because she's awesome. The big thing is we spend so much time in our business focusing on the other parts, sales. I spend so much time in sales. I love sales. That's my favorite part, right? I want to help the guys get better. And spending the time here, you don't see the immediate impact on your business, but I have to. And I'm trying. I'm spending weekly now. I'm meeting with my customer service reps. I'm learning about their hopes and dreams. I'm trying to figure out where they want to go in their lives. And I have to coach them. So that's a sale. The girl who booked that job still believes she's not good at sales. She can never be good at sales. And she's wrong. She stood her ground. She got a customer to book with us, and we closed the job. So when you handed the baton to us, most people would say, well, that was an impossible job to book. No, she grabbed the baton, and then she handed it right to the technician, and then he closed it. And that's huge for us. And, it's hard. But, yeah, it's an area of our business where I want to devote more time and energy to. But it's going to be costly, right? And that's a lot of things. You build a really good foundation in your customer service team, and you're going to reap the benefits years later. It may not be in the short term. It's kind of like investing in branding, which we were talking a lot about. You invest in it, and then you see the fruits of your labor later on. So
yeah. I think it's a lot of parts of business, right? Like, if you want to make it better, you got to put the investment in, and eventually, it might not be, you get the reward right now, but in the long term, you're in a better spot.
And the sales. The problem is, I know if I work with the sales team, service team that's going out to the customers, I can have this immediate gratification because I can see the ticket average go up. It's just it all connects, and everybody who listens to this.
And I would say the booking percentage is just as important as your ticket average, right? Like that should be a number that you look at is just as important.
Yeah.
Right?
It is. No, I know, and you're learning, but it's setting those operations, working with people like yourself, Justin. When you give us data that's eye-opening, it wakes us up a little bit, and kind of where we started off the show is where I would give people this advice with their marketing agency. Before you point your finger at your marketing agency and what they're doing, you got to look in the mirror and think about what you can be doing better. That is my one big piece of advice. I've always kind of said to people is, are you perfect? Because if you're going to call and kick and scream about things not going well, how are you handling your leads? And really, is it good? Do you have good data to report on? So I really enjoyed this conversation, Justin. This is a hot topic for us recently. So I'm looking forward to kind of reporting back to you in a few months on how we are booking at higher rates here.
Yeah, maybe we'll in a later episode we can hear all your successes and how much that has improved.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and as always, I appreciate your guys' support. It's huge having a marketing agency like you at A Second Opinion, and
ultimately you just want a partnership, right, with from both sides, right, where you can work together and continually improve. That's ultimately what we're looking for. I'm sure that's what you are looking for as well, right? Whenever it's kind of leans towards not being that's when it gets a little tough. But you guys are a great partner, and we always work together and are just always looking to how to make things better. So
cool. No, same. All right. Catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Home Service Contractor Blueprint. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe so you can stay up to date on home service trends.